If you love variety and thrive on challenges and want to get into tech, you've clicked on the right video. Today, I'm speaking to a change and strategic consultant. It's not a role that's often talked about, but it allows you the opportunity to work in many different industries, which makes this conversation all the more exciting. Kanika, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, could you tell me a bit about what is a change consultant?
So it's interesting because I think that we're a newer invention. If you think about, change management is essentially a practice of how in organizations you help people to transition from one thing to another. So that might be a new way of working. It might be a new service you're delivering, and it's how you transition people from one stage to another. The bit that I do, though, is probably the bit that definitely comes from kind of the rise of organizations using technology, which is that I do work around change management in relation to tech.
Right.
So we're putting it in. I do the change bit where I go, how do we get the people, the processes, the stuff that's around organizations into the right place?
Okay, so that's why you founded Beetroot Consultancy.
I founded Beetroot Consultancy because I'm a rebel.
Expand.
So I've got a weird career background. In the sense of I like variety. I have ADHD. I like exploring. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs who've always done work in places with, kind of a social or values outcome. So I had started my career in working in social enterprises, kind of managing projects. Without really knowing what a project was. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I think it's a thing. And then went to a bigger organization and did kind of quite structured kind of project management stuff. Moved into PMO, moved around a bunch of different roles, and then ended up doing kind of change management as a capability, which was that whole thing around, for the first time, understanding how do we do that in a formalized way in relation to new technology coming in. And how do we do that in a way that means that we can really make sure technology does what the organizations want it to do? Because there's often a kind of real separation between the bit that is the tech bit and the bit that is, well, why are we doing that? So I think that I then had a big jump into, I moved into tech then after that, weirdly. So I was a change person.
Okay.
And then I moved into tech.
You had a change management role that was outside of tech. And then this new thing, which was more becoming, I guess tech was now taking over a lot of different organizations. And then you transitioned into more a specialist role, which is tech specific.
Yeah. So essentially, change management can be in any area. And then I think that what happened was I learned and got comfortable with tech, which meant that I now work in, essentially set up Beetroot to be an organization that works with organizations that want to do change management for tech.
Okay, so for someone who knows nothing about change management, could you talk us through the conception of a project of, say, an organization is like, right, we need a change consultant to come in or a strategic consultant to come in. What warrants that kind of scenario? What creates that work for you? How does it work in terms of calling you in, and then what do you do when you come in as well? And then what do you do to then say, okay, success, we have succeeded on our mission, we are now ready for change, or we have now changed?
So usually, and I can say this quite clearly, organizationally, when they realize they need change management is usually a key couple of points. So either they're about to do something really big. So the organization might be like, we're going to put in a new CRM system. It's going to be huge. It's going to be across a bunch of areas. And then they go, well, we need to think consciously about how we bring people along.
What's a CRM?
A client record management system. So that's essentially where you put all of your kind of client or customer or service user data. So it might be the system that sends the emails out or the appointments out, depending on what kind of service you've got. But that kind of system, because it's quite cross-cutting usually, so it'll be impacting lots of different departments, the operation, the finance, or all the different areas. When people go, I want to do something big, they then go, well, we need to think about people.
Okay.
The other one would be when they get it wrong. So when people put in technology into an organization and they throw it over the fence, and then what happens is everyone goes, we hate that and we're not using it. That's when they go, well, we need to think about change management. And then the other one where people usually go, well, we've realized something's gone wrong, we need change management. It's usually when they've put in a new piece of technology and they've realized their return on investment isn't clear. So one of the real things that I believe about change management is, and this is, it's going to offend everybody who's considering getting into tech now, because if you're of this mindset, you're of this mindset, which is, I think tech is an enabler for us to do things in organizations in our lives. And the point to me is not tech. The point is, did I get something done in a better way, in a faster way, in a way that could mean that I could add more value? Exactly. To be able to actually get tech to work, you need people to adopt it. Technology without adoption, without people using it, without people believing in it, without it linking into the purpose of the work or the outcome, to me, it's nothing. So I think that often what we do in change management is we help organizations to work out why they want something and then tie that into the delivery so that the technology really delivers value.
So do you then speak to a lot of the different department leads and try and maybe change their mindset as well? Because I can imagine humans don't like change. Like that would come with a lot of resistance, a lot of questions. How do you navigate that?
So I think, interestingly, a lot of people think about change management as, and a lot of it is about resistance. A lot of it is about how do you get people on side? How do you engage people to go, this is really exciting. Interestingly, when you get an opportunity to work with an organization before they've started doing a change, the best way to kind of do change management is to make sure that the people who potentially could be resistant are bought in from day one. So really the job, when you get a good chance to do it well, is that you wander around an organization and chat to everybody. And you become
friends with everybody.
Friend. Exactly. And you're just like, super charming and lovely. And you create a kind of great conversation. And that great conversation means that you don't go, oh, we've got this tech coming in, you're going to love it. You're not persuading people that way. You're like, what's your problems? What's going on for you? And then when they go, oh, we've got this issue, that issue, you're able to then, kind of, I suppose, engage them with the IT teams to make sure that those people are on the front foot in saying, I want this piece of technology and I want to make sure that it's in, and I want it to do this, and I want to guide it, and I want to design it, and it's going to do all these things for us. So the best way to do technology is actually to hopefully not have to persuade everyone when it's already there that it's great. You make them own it from the beginning.
That's the thing. People want to feel like their voice were heard. They want to feel like they were seen and they were considered, because most of the time organizations, they want to make changes without even considering the people on the ground. So I think half the work is just those conversations of like, hey, how's it going? What's difficult? And then 9 times out of 10, you might even have the solution before you've even spoken to them. But just having that chat and then just going, oh, we weren't able to implement this, but I hope this one is a good workaround. And they'll be thinking, oh, you remembered.
Yeah. I mean, it's building a partnership, right?
Yeah.
You're building a partnership. And I mean, my view of organizations long term is I'm like, I don't know, technology in organizations to me is, all organizations are technology.
Yeah.
And it's gonna get even bigger, with some of the big things that are coming up.
Yeah.
Every leader, every person, every manager needs to be also feeling like they're in a technology organization. For them to be able to do that, it needs to, move from resistance, I hate this, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
From then graduate to kind of partnership, okay, we're meeting your needs, service, delivery, into actually we fundamentally work together constantly, because I'm always thinking about how can technology help me to do what I need to do when I'm, I don't know, booking in customers. It should get there if we can build that type of kind of partnership.
So what are the key characteristics that you'd say that you have that makes you a successful change or strategic consultant?
I'd probably say I love wandering around and asking questions. I think it's just a core part of my personality. I'm one of them where I don't really feel any shame about being like, what's that? Tell me about that. I actually find it really exciting to learn constantly.
Yeah.
So I think the thing about being in change is that, you don't arrive as a tech expert. And actually the best way to translate between those two groups of people, some being techie, some being not, is actually you're the person in the room who asks the dumb question.
Yeah.
So I think that quality is important. I think you also have to have probably a really annoying, positive view of the world, because I do think, and I'm that kind of person where I'm like, it's going to work out. I think you do spend a lot of time, because I'm talking to people who might feel really disempowered by change and by technology, and being able to not only keep your own spirits up, but also to help them create a vision for what they want, requires you to be quite positive. And I suppose the other thing about it is I think you also have to have a real curiosity about people, because different people experience change in different ways, and it shows up for them in different ways. And I think that being able to be kind of compassionate to them in however that shows up, I think is really important. I think, I've had people, shout at me. I've had people cry. Oh. I've had people, but you need to be able to hold space for all of that, because actually what you really want to know is, you need to go on a journey with them around what's happening there. And some of my biggest success stories are people who have gone from, oh, I wish this woman wouldn't email me or talk to me or turn up again, to someone who's like, you know what? Like, I not only have faith in what Kanika's saying to me, I also have faith in what we're doing here. And actually, I think it's the right thing to do. And they're like the biggest advocates. So I think most change professionals will say that.
So you said something, all organizations should be tech companies, or they should view themselves as tech companies. What different industries have you had exposure to so far? And I guess, how can you back up that statement by, I guess, maybe the exposure that you've had in these all different organizations, and why they should technically all be tech companies now?
So I've worked in energy retail, higher education, social enterprises, small kind of private businesses, quite a wide variety, public sector. And I think that a lot of those organizations are the kind of organizations, a lot of private sector, so big private sector. And a lot of those organizations, I don't think I've ever seen one where they consider themselves a tech company. I've seen ones where they're better at tech. I've seen ones where they're further along in their journey around embracing what it could give for them. I think that the ability to, really use it and own it in organizations is something that I'd say we're all on a bit of a journey around. I feel like I'm on a journey around that. With my business, I'm like constantly exploring how can I bring things in quite consciously, and it's not something that's just part of my practice.
Yeah.
Because what I want to do is go out and deliver change. And I think that if your delivery is, I've opened my sandwich shop, and then sell sandwiches, you're focused on that. You're not focused on, well, how could technology help me to do this? Because actually you're thinking about the service that you're delivering. And I think that some of the experiences I've had in other organizations is essentially the same challenge, but just on a bigger scale. Is that?
Yeah, I think I like that. I think I say the same thing. I say that every company now in 2025 should be a tech company, right? Because realistically, the world, the way it's become, you can't access any service without it being on an app or it being on a website or something like that. Like when you travel, when you go down the street or whatever, like everything is very digital. So if you are offering a product or a service and you're not really present online, and you don't have a reliable application, reliable software, or whatever it is that you're providing, even if, for example, some of the third-party companies that some people use, they are also, say, partnering with a tech company. So they have to be tech savvy. They have to understand it. Otherwise, you might have all these issues, all these bugs, all these errors that you're going through. But because you don't have anyone technical in your organization, you're probably losing out on sales or losing out on maximizing on potential, right? So I 100% agree with that.
Absolutely. I think it's exactly what you said, which is you lose opportunities if you don't use tech.
Absolutely.
But as well as that, I think there's something really interesting about, so we do a lot of work with small to medium-sized organizations, which often don't have the money to kind of bring in, they either wouldn't have a big IT team.
Yeah.
So the people who are often the experts going around going, okay, what could we do there? You know, they may not be able to afford them, or they may not have that kind of in-house understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what the work we do is about helping those existing leaders to have the things and the tools and the knowledge and the capability they need so that they can navigate that technology in a modern world. And I think more and more and more, I think the people who lean into that and are curious about technology will get ahead, because actually the ability to make it, to use technology so that you can really get to the good stuff. And I say this when I suppose my reflections about technology and where it works really well is where it can help you to do something faster. It can, give you information quicker. It can connect you quicker. But to me, the reason for using technology is so that you can create more space for human interaction.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, I love the idea that what I'm helping people to do with tech and what they could envision themselves doing with tech could mean that actually what you get is like more time on the phone with a friend, or more time connecting with a client or a customer, because everything else, all the other stuff just happens,
Yeah. And okay, so for someone who goes in and creates change and works in organizations, you speak to departments, how does somebody who is trying to get into tech make themselves, or are in tech, how do they make themselves indispensable in an organization where tech is coming to take over a lot of roles, a lot of jobs? How does somebody who either transitions newly in tech, how do they position themselves to become indispensable? And how does somebody also position themselves in an organization, maybe doing something non-technical? How do they make themselves indispensable?
I mean, it's an interesting question, because I think that to me, the question almost doesn't need the tech bit.
Okay.
From the perspective of, I would say that my answer would be, if you're in an organization and you want to be made indispensable, the way in which you do that is actually through being kind of I would say a kind of good corporate citizen. There's something about going, you are able to put yourself in a position where you can be clear about, I suppose, the value that you add.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean, not going, I'm going to do all the things, which is one of the defaults. I'm going to be busy. I'm going to be in everybody's business. I'm going to take every project. No, I think it's about being really intentional about the stuff you're going to do, and being able to take the time to articulate, what does this mean in the sense of not just the thing I did. I can tell you what I did. Now I can tell you why I did it, what it did for the organization, the department, and link it into the strategy. I think there's something important about articulation. I think the other bit, and I think that's particularly key in tech, to pull it back, which is to say, I've done some development. Do I understand where it fits? Do I understand what it contributed to? Do I understand what organizational value? Yeah. Being able to just do that exercise means that if someone asks you, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? It's right there. You know the context.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is also about, being able to be curious. So one of the things that's always done me well is that I wander around going, what's this and what's that, and get very excited about different things, tech specifically, but also people. And I think being able to be curious, have that kind of growth mindset, and to explore makes members of staff in organizations, especially in tech, the kind of people who are kind of malleable. So people then know, actually, I can put them there or there or there, and they're going to be up for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's again probably a mindset thing.
So in terms of change management, roles in change management, is it just your role, or do you work with a bigger team? How is that team makeup put together? And I am asking mostly for people who want to transition into your role. Do you just wake up and become a change manager? What's the step-by-step to become you?
It's going to sound a little bit kind of ridiculous, but I suppose I'd say, if you can have a role of a change manager, but actually change managers are already change managers, because they already have that mindset. It starts with that. And I think, that thing around I was saying before about you've got to be interested in people, you've got to be interested in the bigger picture, you've got to be interested in, you've got to have enthusiasm for delivering change and you've got to have a belief that change is positive.
How does someone develop that? How do you have that mindset? Is it just a characteristic trait?
I would say in most change managers that I've ever met, they've gone, oh yeah, I was always like that. I mean, I don't know how, I haven't met anyone who developed it, but I would say there are obviously key skills that you go through and the roles that you go through to hone those skills.
You have to be somebody who wants to solve problems, basically. Okay.
And be up for it.
Yeah.
And quite like the challenge of that, you're probably going to end up having a lot of difficult conversations with people.
Okay.
I'd say in the sense of the roles, there's a bunch of different ways to get into change management. So one of them would be if you're in, say, a large organization and they are looking for subject matter experts. So say you work in the sandwich shop, right? And you're the person who knows the most about how the kind of till works. If someone wants to replace the till, then you're the person who tells them how the till works and then works with them to go, how are we going to put that new piece of technology in? So going in as a subject matter expert is usually a good route because what it gives you is a view on what the change is, and you end up engaging with change people or with technology that is coming in. So you get to see the process. I'd then say the other route through into that would be some people like to go a kind of project management route. Project management and change management are distinct but partnered specialisms. So usually your project management is more about the scheduling, the timing, how things are going to happen. Some project managers also think they're change managers. That's a debate for another time. Met a few of them. And some people are change managers. And I think that sometimes going in through project management gives you a view on how projects work, which can be a nice way to then transition into change. The other route, you see I've thought about this.
I love it.
Yeah. The other route is kind of analysis. So a lot of people become change analysts through being kind of business analysts. So that kind of SME subject matter expert role. Actually, I'm going to document the processes and say how it works for us. And learning an analyst skill set moves you quite quickly into kind of a change management skill set. So the graduation being, I now know about the thing I'm doing. I can now write down the thing I'm doing in a way that, and then now analyze it, which means from a change management, a change analyst perspective, I can see what the things are we're doing. And now I can look at it in the sense of, well, what's the service? Who are the people? How do I help people to move from one state to another? So it kind of, from a capability perspective, graduates. And it's the same as, doing kind of proper change management. You can be a change manager and sit alongside a project manager, side by side. I do all the people stuff, stakeholders, communications, engagement. This person does all of the kind of overarching project. How does technology work? Same program. You can be kind of a strategic change lead at the same time as you're the equivalent of a program manager, or you can work at a really senior level and do that kind of strategic change stuff, which is where it starts crossing over with kind of business architecture and things like that. So it's interestingly, strategic change management is much more about what's all the things that are happening in an organization. How do we make sure we've got a full view of it and it fits?
I love that. I love that you've given all these different avenues and different pathways into it, because it is very much a role that I've never heard before until I met you actually virtually. So I was like, what is a change consultant? Because I've heard of so many different roles in tech. So I like that you've at least given avenues, because a lot of people who might be already in tech, might be business analysts, might be project managers, and they're thinking, oh, I want a slightly different role. And the fact that you're talking about these various different industries, like for example, being a subject matter expert on a till, or even in like a coffee shop or something like that. Right now, I've spoken to a lot of people in Africa where they're trying to bring tech into even the marketplace, right? Like where literally there's no tech in sight, but then they're thinking, what are the ways that we can bring tech into every organization? And I think, is that where you see your kind of specialism going into, like more of the roles that I guess, or maybe organizations that don't have the tech, and kind of attacking those head on to bring more tech into it? where do you see change management going within the next, I guess, foreseeable future, 5 to 10 years or so?
I suppose I'd say, and I think about change management as a capability. So I suppose I don't think about it as a role. I think a bit about it as a kind of skill set, a toolkit, a function.
Yeah.
So I think that the growing of technology and it going into a number of different places means that the pairing of change management with that is just a necessary thing.
Yeah.
And I think that it will scale quite considerably, but I don't think it'll look like it looks now. So I think within a structured project management, space, we can go, there's a change person and there's a project person and there's the tech stuff, and it's very kind of segmented. My view of where it's going to go is that within organizations where maybe they don't have a kind of big, a big kind of IT function, it'll be more like the skills and the capabilities of change management become further embedded within the skills of the people who are in the organization. So for instance, they have a framework that says this is the way that we do change, and they have a standard way that they do training, and they have a way of going, how do we make sure people feel heard? So I think the capability will always exist. I think that in the next 5 years, enough people will fail at delivering tech as to realize they might need to work out how to bring people along. So for instance, with that example of, people bringing tech into the marketplace, my view would be the first few times they do a couple of iterations of that, someone will go, well, why did it fail? And it won't be because the tech was bad. It was because someone didn't know about it. They didn't know how to use it, At which point the reaction when someone goes, well, why don't we do some training? That's when change management turned up.
Okay. Yeah, you did say at the beginning that it's usually when someone fails at implementing something, that's when. Why is it that people fail then? Is it because they're not asking the right questions?
It's a massive question. Well, we haven't got time for that question. I could write when there's some questions where you go, I should do a PhD on just that question. Just that one. It'd be depressing. Why do people fail?
Why do people fail?
I think, this is going to get a bit deep. I think people fail because at delivering tech, fundamentally because they are not clear on what or why they need it. And what that means is, and translates to be, is that people spend a lot of time focusing on getting the tech right, but they have underestimated fundamentally the power of a person going, nah, I'm all right, So I would say I've been on some big, massive deliveries, incredible deliveries, beautiful technology, absolutely stunning. And actually you give it to people who are there to use it, and their ability to go, no, I'm not going to do that, and take it apart is just tremendous and always underestimated. So I think when people fail, it's because actually they've forgotten that the purpose of the technology is to do something for a person. And unless that person wants it, they'll find a way. They'll find a way, because we're powerful.
Oh my goodness. That makes me think even organizations that create those applications or software that they think this is going to be amazing, and then they launch and then it's like a flop because people are like, we don't need it like that. We want it different.
Yeah. Well, it's why that practice of kind of user-centered design and researching is good, because actually building in a constant conversation with your users means that you're more likely to meet their needs. So that idea that we create tech products and tech services and change things with a real kind of understanding of who people are, that is, in many ways the core of doing good change management, which is you tie yourself and make yourself the best friend of the person that you're solving the problem for. Yeah. And you keep the problem really clear. And then no one goes, well, I never needed that.
Yeah. Because you have those conversations from the beginning, basically. So they're not going to say we don't need it. So going back to, I guess, how people get into what you do. So you're a consultancy. So you're business to business?
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get into, because you already said you were already in change management, but then you pivoted into a tech change management role. And then obviously that's where Beetroot came into the picture. So if I'm now getting into change management and I've gone through the avenues you're talking about, do organizations, or do I apply into your consultancy? Like, how do you then become a change management individual? Are these jobs advertised on JobServe, on Indeed? Like, where do you find these contracts, if you will? So obviously you're doing business to business, but obviously no business is going to trust me if I've never managed a whole CRM movement. So how do people then confidently say, okay, I'm going to find work as a change management individual?
So I think the transition between, so if you're at a point where you've worked in change management for a while, you've, honed your craft, you know some stuff. And actually, I think the key question before you make the jump is, do I like what I'm doing?
Okay.
Because fundamentally, don't go self-employed or start a business or start doing kind of contracting work if you don't like it, because it's a grind already. So
yes.
don't add that pressure. Stay in your job. I'd say the transition into doing it as a consultant, as a person who's self-employed, for me is about going, well, what kind of consulting do I want to do? So I think that there are kind of big change management consulting firms. You can apply to them from the perspective of, it's the equivalent of what your kind of KPMG, bobbies do. There's kind of these big firms who do that. And there's smaller firms who do that, who'll put out jobs on the market like you described and you'll go in and be a kind of freelancer for them. There's a difference between that and going, what I want to do is create exchanges with organizations where I go in on a kind of contractor basis. Usually the route in through them is that you would need to go to a kind of recruitment company who does contractors. My advice with that would be, make sure that you move into that space with an understanding of kind of what your niche is. I think picking a niche is clever in the sense of, I'm really good at this sector and these products, and you have a sense of who's in the market as to whether there's a need for that skill in that space before you give up the ability to pay your rent or your mortgage. Check that. That's recruitment agencies. What I do with Beetroot Consulting is I set up the business and started doing some stuff around kind of freelancing and contracting, and then shifted, and I'm still shifting a lot of the model so that it's more B2B. So it's a kind of gradual shift instead of it being, okay, I arrived and now I'm going to start my own consulting business in 5 minutes and I've paid 20 quid to company's house, and then suddenly I expect everyone to want to work for me. It doesn't work like that. No. I think the other bit that is probably be my lesson in that transition, and that's like one I learned like this year, and it's jam, which is definitely around people work with people, whatever format, contract, employment, whatever it is, with people they've worked with before.
Okay.
So people looking at the people you have worked with historically in the past who've seen you deliver.
Reach out to them.
They're the people who go, oh, I know a person, or I would want to work with you again. I think the other one is, the more that you can do more work in front of more people, the more likely then work comes to you.
Make yourself visible.
Exactly. Yeah. Conferences, workshops, and there's a whole thing about, should you be giving up your time for that? And I'm like, you should, if you're in front of people and you're demoing things and doing stuff and showing your skill in that space with people who'll go, I remembered them. Because actually I'd say, we do quite a bit on LinkedIn. It's not LinkedIn. LinkedIn don't bring you anything. Nothing. It's all about the space that you can create to give people your skill, and then they go, yes, that's what I need.
I was going to ask you, as the final question, what your career advice would be to somebody, but then you've already done it. But is there anything else that you'd like to add that you'd say is the best career advice that you've ever received? You've given so many gems there.
Yeah, sometimes I wander off in conversation.
You
got gems whether you're ready. I think probably one of the biggest things I suppose that's quite important to me now, that I think is interesting for others to explore. So I wouldn't say it's for everybody, but I'd say it's something that I think is really, been really kind of curious to me, is I think when thinking about what I want to do in my career, what I want to do in the sense of my next steps, my big thing is that what I do is I go into that scenario. So I enter into a new opportunity, a new partnership, a new engagement, and I enter into it really open. And then what I do is I come out of that engagement and I cross-check and see how I feel, which sounds absolutely crazy, but actually it's a really good barometer for, is that the right energy for me to be in? Is it the right role I wanted to be in? Is it the right engagement I want to have? And being able to do that cross-check and then being like, actually, nah, that's not a bit of me, or that is a bit of me, because I think it helps you to cross-check with whether I'm moving towards something that feels purposeful, joyful, appropriate. Because actually I think that we often get lost in this kind of scarcity mindset of, well, I need to pay my bills, you know, instead of going, you know what, you can, you know, abundance, everything comes, but actually you need to be able to move yourself intentionally in a way that gives you energy, because then things come.
And the right energy is unmatched. I feel like when you have the right energy in your life, you can have peace, you can have a life that you actually love and enjoy. Because if you just pick something up that is just for the sake of keeping the business running or keeping your bills and the lights on, it's better to live with your mum and be happy.
I don't, because we're on a podcast too now. Because 100%. And I think especially when you're in tech, and especially when you're in kind of that, you know, self-employed or contracting mode, the ability to get stuck in, but I gotta make my money. You know, like,
you just become miserable.
Exactly.
Like, that's a whole conversation for another day.
We'll park that. Because,
honestly, because I think happiness is very important. I think mental health is a thing, and picking things up that are just not good for your energy is just it's.
And I do think there's a lot of things about, you know, in tech, careers are more lucrative. And you can't dismiss that actually that's a very, very, you know, it's a privileged thing to be able to move into a space and to learn this skill set that's so, you know, marketable. And, you know, not to be rude, but, you know, some of it was part of why I did, you know, what I did. But I also think, you know, the point of being in that kind of sector is actually so that surely you can now make more choices once you've learned what you've got to learn.
But we get stuck in the rat race, don't we?
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the future of Beetroot? What's the future that you guys are heading towards?
It's interesting, actually, because first of all, Beetroot in and of itself, you know, I probably say I really love this idea that organizations are organic and they change all the time. And I'm very into that, funnily enough, as a change manager. This is what I mean. We just exist.
Yeah,
like, if you
it's
are,
who you are. It's in your DNA.
Yeah. That's why people will be watching this, they'll be like, oh, I think I'm one of them. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm one of them. So in the sense of like, what is the future? So this year we're doing some really interesting stuff, because we do stuff usually with small to medium-sized organizations, helping them to build their change capability. And whilst that's been fantastic, what I realized was, and hopefully none of them are watching, I got a bit bored. Because in my mind, what's really interesting is putting different capabilities together. So what I realized is that we were doing some really interesting stuff with SMEs, but wouldn't it be interesting to think about if we could help people do change management at the same time as thinking about how we could make other things more accessible?
Okay.
So like, can we do change management and EDI together? Can we do change management and data together? Can we do, so that creative kind of mixing of skills is the next thing we're on. So this year we are basically launching a partnership with I've been told I can't have 10, so I'm only allowed 4 partners.
Okay.
Because I was like, it's a prototype, Kanika, stop. I was like, fine. So we're 4 partners.
Yeah.
And we will be working out a new model, essentially as kind of as kind of specialist kind of service providers, where we essentially work out how we can work together and make a new offering. And then it means it'll launch in as a partnership in summer, but as well as that, we're creating a new online kind of learning community so that we can continue sharing to individuals and organizations about change. So essentially you can come onto that platform and go on and learn, how do I do change management? What would it be like? So whether you wanted to be a practitioner or you just want to learn about the skill, that's you know, we're there for that. And you can learn user research and learning design and all these interesting things. So that's terrifying, exciting, and I'll let you know in October if I'm like, well, that went wrong. Because I'm up for that. We change people. We're like, we can fail too.
I love that. I think in life, they always say that it's better to have failed projects than regret. So it's better to just go head in and dive in, let 2025 be fun. And then we'll see if it's a success. But either way, a step is a step, and it's successful in itself. Like, honestly, so well done. I'm gonna keep tabs on you, see how you're getting on with that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You can invite me back and I'll be like, well.
Let me tell you guys, I failed. But that's all part of it.
Yeah,
it's part
exactly.
of it. It's part of the journey. So how do people connect with you?
So I do a lot on LinkedIn. So it's at Kanika Selvin. You won't find many Kanika Selvins, so I think it's going to be fine. I think it actually comes as Kanika S.
Okay.
Just because I needed some anonymity.
Yeah.
So I left a little bit. I was like, could I just not be so
It's
big?
like me, Rachel Malotta. Not a lot of people have Malotta as their last name. So even though there's a lot of Rachels, as soon as you put MLOTA, it's my face that comes up.
Well, someone was called Kanika at my nail bar. I was mortified. I was like, we are one. Like, what are you talking about?
How dare you
Kanika?
have my name?
Exactly. I am one. So I'm both things. I'm like really visible with the name, but also like annoyed if anyone
else has it.
Exactly. So on LinkedIn, we do quite a bit on my Beetroot LinkedIn page. So that's more like, so I suppose if you want to hear my kind of continued ramblings on thoughts of the day.
Yeah, personal.
Yeah, exactly. It's much more like, and I think that's my personal LinkedIn. My Beetroot Consulting LinkedIn, so Beetroot Consulting has Beetroot Partners and Beetroot Collective within it. So that is where we share stuff that's around kind of change management. You can hear stories of us working with different organizations. We do some stuff, interestingly, on what to do and tools and guides and stuff.
Oh, nice.
And then we have a TikTok, but I'm about to retire it.
Okay.
So I'm not going to tell anyone about that.
Okay.
But we do also have an Instagram, which is also under my name.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed this chat, and I'm sure people at home will now know how to transition into change management and what it is. So yeah, thank you for sharing your gems.
No problem.
Thanks guys for tuning in. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.